And thankfully, Tom Williamson is up here to tell us about all of those, the 9/11 conspiracies.
Hello everyone. So yes, in case you hadn't noticed, today's date is September the 11th. It's the 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, the biggest terrorist attack in history, where just under 3,000 people lost their lives. But I'd like to have a show of hands. Who remembers it? Because over 20 years ago, yeah, some hands didn't go up. Okay. So for those of you who didn't remember it, this is the official version of what happened. So at 7:59 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 takes off with 5 hijackers, including the ringleader, Mohammed Atta. 16 minutes later, from the same airport in Boston, Flight 175 takes off. And then at 8:20, Flight 77 takes off, another 5 hijackers. And then at 8:42, 42 minutes behind schedule, Flight 93 takes off. From Newark, New Jersey. So with all the planes in the air, at 8:46, Flight 11 hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center. It was captured by some firemen filming a documentary and a Czech worker. But then with all eyes on the World Trade Center, there's loads of images of Flight 175 hitting the South Tower at 9:03. And then while those towers were burning, the Flight 77 hits the Pentagon at 9:37. And that's when everyone went, oh, wow, this is big. This is big. If it wasn't big before, it's big now. So after burning for about 56 minutes, the South Tower collapses. It falls to the floor after about 10 seconds after one of the floors just gives way. But the people on Flight 93, because they took off late, they've got mobile phones. They actually heard about it, and they thought, well, we don't want to meet the same fate. So they attacked the people who had hijacked the plane. And they were about to get in the cockpit when the hijacker pilot, put the plane into a nosedive, and it came down somewhere in Pennsylvania. And meanwhile, the North Tower is still burning, and it collapses at 10:28 a.m. But that wasn't the end of it. The collapse of the towers caused various other buildings to be destroyed and damaged, and most notably World Trade Center 7. The debris had severed gas mains, started loads of fires, and it eventually gave up and collapsed at about 5:30. So the conspiracy theories started pretty much straight away. You have people like Alex Jones and InfoWars and the documentary Loose Change forming what's more or less called the 9/11 truth movement. But all of these conspiracy theories rely on what's called the House of Cards fallacy, this idea that if you just take one bit away, then it all comes down. But I'm afraid evidence doesn't work like that. Some of the claims are really, really easy to debunk. Things like the planes were holograms. It wasn't actually planes that flew into the towers on those days. It was missiles disguised as planes. And if anyone knew what CGI was like in 2001, it's just a pipe dream. And the other thing, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Jet fuel can't make steel beams, Stu. It was a ridiculous mantra. But of course, the jet fuel didn't need to melt the steel beams. It just needed to weaken them. And people have studied this, and they found that when you heat the steel for long enough, it buckles. You can see that Boeing effect on the picture on the right. And eventually, it couldn't support the floor above, and that came down. Very much like the French demolition technique of Veronage. You can watch compilations of this on YouTube. So what they do is they remove one floor, remove all the supports, and the whole building comes down. But the thing is, no one really cares about 9/11 truth anymore. It was never going to go anywhere. It's now just this weird little historical curio. But what we should remember from 9/11 is the heroes, because we saw the worst of humanity that day, but we also saw the best. So you saw people like the firefighters, over 300 firefighters died that day. They were going in when everyone else was coming out. And of course, the people on Flight 93, who if they hadn't fought back, 9/11 would have been even worse than it was. Thank you very much.